move forward 10, 20, 30 years, we're going to be able to read a text in any language from any language. And it's going to be pretty good. Actually, I'm pretty certain that some computers will write better than I at translating my own text. So I think we're going there. We no longer have an excuse to restrict the size. Again, I think the target now should be to have something that is comprehensive, comprises all the world's journal, provided they set a minimum amount of quality, is what we generally recognize as quality assessing process in the different fields. Thank you.
Well, thanks. So you say that technically we can map it all, we should have all the journals. We have the case, the experience of Cielo, which has been a success in making many Brazilian journals, and actually also journals from other places in Latin America, Ibero-America actually, open access, accessible. However, I also hear that in the Brazilian CAPES, this is the research evaluation exercise of postgraduate degrees, the journals in Cielo have lower rankings in general than the journals in the Web of Science. So I would like to hear from Abel Packard about the experience of Cielo, the successes and the frustrations.
Okay. Thank you, Ismael, for the opportunity to be here. I will follow Eric's presentation to present the view that we try to build from Brazil and from Latin America, from the Cielo program. So what we think is that we are sequestered, or the flow of research communication is in some way sequestered. So we are in a labyrinth, where the national policies, in general, tells the researchers and the research programs that really you need to publish in what is the high impact journals. That is the fact. And the new students, new researchers are, of course, oriented to search for the high impact journal she or he can publish, because she or he or her or his program will win more points in the evaluation. So this is a system that replicates, and reproduces to itself. And Cielo is actually a research program aiming at the advancement of research, as our agencies say, but research that are published in nationally edited journals. We eliminated the expression national journals. We say journals that are published nationally, instead to eliminate this dichotomy of a mainstream and regional journals, which in general implies that the regional journals are from second category, okay? So, for many reasons, language, international collaboration, you all know, our journals or our research that are published in regional journals has less citations. And nobody created an adjustment factor or an adjustment index to compensate who publish in Portuguese and who publish only with national research. Okay? And so, what to do? We have a slogan that we tell the people that, okay, mimicking the think globally and the act locally, you say, okay, think quartile 1 and the act in quartile 4. Okay, that's where we are today. So we have been developing a program We are now celebrating 18 years of operation this year, and we are moving our journals to be more competitive, okay, in the way they publish research. No? So we divided our action in three main action lines that we call professionalization, okay, which is do journals in, let's say, a transparent way, following good editorial practice, and trying to publish in, let's say, a fast way, okay, in 3-6 months as an average, okay, of publishing. That is extremely difficult, because most of the countries in Latin America, they have a medium, the collection of Cielo has a medium of 1 year in terms of the date of submission and the actual date of publishing. So the peer review process, the editing process is very still amateur, is very still take too long. So we are trying to improve this mechanism, asking as an indexing criteria that all journals need to run an online submission system, okay, in a transparent way. And we are also suggesting journals to publish in a continuous way, so don't worry anymore about issues, okay? And so we see a volume, you publish it like a platform of articles, okay? This is improving a lot with the time. And the other component of this improvement is try to lessen, you know, radically the costs of publishing. You know? So we are making a huge effort that all journals in Cielo will run with the JETS XML schema. No? So we can, let's say, in the near future, try to generate automatically PDFs in EPUB so we can lessen the costs to make it with much more quality in terms of the structure of the text and the bibliographic elements, and with a low cost. The third component is much more complex and polemic, that we are, as I say, improving what we call internationalization of the journals. You know? Establishing expected percentage of participation of foreign researchers in the editorial management, you know, as associate editor or referees or peer reviews. We are also expecting to have a given percentage of English in the articles per thematic area. For example, in Brazil, we defined that the thematic area of agriculture is expected to publish 50% in English and 50 to 60% in Portuguese. No? And the Cielo methodology or law, no, permitted the publishing of multilingual articles. For example, in biomedical area, we have 30% of the articles that are published simultaneously in Portuguese and English, which so you answer both market. No? So that's the way we are doing, and we are trying, you know, to find new indicators, you know, that could show the importance of the journal. And some of the indicators that we have been used, for example, the last week I was in Mexico, and the people from Cimago, Félix Moya, presented the distribution of consumption of articles by the Mexican researchers. Okay, and the first place was Elsevier journals, and the second place were Cielo journals. So, considering as, let's say, a kind of a publisher. So we expect that the national agencies and also the authors in some way will find new ways to evaluate the research that is published. Of course, research that are published in Spanish and in Portuguese, they are in Cielo. But the research that are published in English, they are more and more moving to the journals from the publishers and that have a better impact in Web of Science. So we are moving in, let's say, structure that we think that we will represent in terms of scopus and Web of Science. Cielo will represent 15% of the articles that are published there. But if we put Cielo and Web of Science, or Cielo and Scopus together, this percentage moves from 20 to 40%. So it's very, very important in terms of communication, in terms of, let's say, quantity. And we hope that this will, let's say, sensibilize the authorities to look to the research that are published in Cielo Journal with much more care, okay, than to strictly look for the, let's say, indicators, impact factor, and the others. That is our challenge.
Excellent, thanks. We'd like now to move to Thomson-Reuters and see how Thomson-Reuters used to have the core journals, the core set of journals, and they've been developing in the last years the Chinese Citation Index and recently the Russian Citation Index. So if Valentin could tell us about the strategy in Thomson-Reuters in terms of pluralizing the coverage.
Thank you, Ismael. I think tonight I'm actually going to speaking wearing two hats, and one of these hats is the Thomson-Reuters hat, but another hat would be a hat of a representative of the Russian academic community, since that's where my academic roots are, and that's a community with which I work pretty much on a daily basis. So I'll try to integrate both of these perspectives. I'd like to start with a little terminological clarification. We often talk about the Web of Science, our flagship information instrument. However, there are effectively two Web of Sciences. There is the famous Web of Science database, which was referred today as the golden standard of the modern research evaluation. The database which comprises the best, the most influential scholarly journals in the world, which was started by Eugene Garfield more than 50 years ago. This database, it's currently called the Web of Science Core Collection. But there is also the Web of Science Information Platform. And the content of the Web of Science Information Platform is significantly broader. Besides the Web of Science Core Collection, this platform comprises about 15 additional databases. It's the topical databases, such as the Biosis database, with information on the life sciences, the Data Citation Index, a number of other databases. And our latest addition to the Web of Science platform is the regional citation databases. Why to add them? Obviously, the universe of modern scholarship is much broader than the golden standard community, so to speak, which is the core of the core collection. There is definitely a pressure, and we all can feel this pressure, to cover more, to cover the lacunas which are absent in the gold standard journals. There are basically two ways to solve this problem. One way would be to simply mechanically increase the coverage in the Web of Science core collection. to add more and more sources there. And that's what I would describe as an easy route, but this is the route which we are not going to take. Obviously, that would lead to lowering of our standards, to problems with the continuity of data, and ultimately it would compromise the content of the Web of Science core collection. So there is a second route, and this route is creation of additional information instruments. And this is our answer. And this is the route which we decided to take in the late 2000s. We started creating these databases with the creation of the Chinese Science Citation Database, which was launched on the Web of Science platform in 2009. Then it was followed by the Cielo database, which we already just heard about. In 2014, we added the Korean Journal Index, and then the latest edition, just in the end of last year, we placed on the Web of Science platform the Russian Science Citation Index. So now we already have 4 large regional citation databases on the Web of Science platform. And we are going to build up on that experience. What do the regional databases have in common? Well, first of all, it's the language issue. And we already heard about the language issue today. So the scholarship in the Web of Science core collection is primarily the scholarship in English language. By authors from many countries, but it's a scholarship which is written and read in English. About 80% of the journals in the core collection are journals published in English. In the regional citation database, it's a reverse situation. There are some journals there, not respectively in Russian, Chinese, or Spanish or Portuguese languages. However, the vast majority of the journals in the regional databases are in the predominant languages of the respective regions. The second characteristics of regional citation databases is that they're built in partnership with the local scholarly communities. This is a very important point. The selection of content for the Web of Science core collection is done exclusively by Thomson-Reuters. It's done by using the uniform standards, which we do not intend to compromise and which we intend to uphold, to keep them uniform for the scholarship coming from any region and any country. With the regional citation database, situation is actually quite different. We built them in partnerships. The Chinese citation database is built in partnership with the Chinese Academy of Science. Same for the Korean database and for Cielo. And the Russian citation database is built in partnership with eLibrary Company, which is a leading indexer of academic literature in Russia. Each of those partners have their own criteria for selecting the content, and these are the criteria which are the best suited for the needs of the regional scholarly community. So let me now move on to the Russian citation database, and I just want to show very briefly a couple of slides which illustrate it. First of all, the language issue. Is there any way to show the slides?
People on the control, can they show the slide? That it's, no? Hello, anybody on control?
All right, let me just describe them verbally. I guess that's a problem with the center-periphery relationship. So, okay, wonderful. So first of all is the question of the language. Actually, this is a slide which is supposed to have a little animation, but we can live without that. So first, we were supposed to see the breakdown of scholarship by Russian authors in the Web of Science core collection. And you could see that there about 94% of scholarship by the Russian scholars in the core collection is actually scholarship in English. Just as there is a small percentage of publication in Russian and just a few hundred in other languages in Ukrainian, French, and German. Now, in the Russian Science Citation Database, RSCI, in short, it's just the opposite. 97% of all publications in RSCI are publications in Russian, and just few publications in other languages. Let's move to the next slide, and that is the structure of publication output. There is a striking difference between the Russian science as viewed through the lenses of the core collection and the Russian science as viewed through the lenses of the RSCI. If we look at the core collection, we can see that almost half of all Russian scholarship really comes just from the two subject areas in the Web of Science core collection, and that's physics and chemistry. Physics producing over about 25%, nearly the quarter of all Russian scholarship, and chemistry producing just a little less. So, viewed from the lenses of the core collection, Russian scholarship predominantly consists of scholarship in the fundamental natural sciences. Now, when we look at it from the RSCI perspective, it's actually quite different. This is something that you can or maybe cannot see on the slide, which is in the screen in front of you. And there you can see that it's a very different mix of disciplines. First, the distribution of publications, it's much more diversified. And the two top areas are engineering and business and economics. Engineering is about 12% and business and economics is about 8%. Also, if we look through the optics of the core collection, there is a very little representation of the social sciences and humanities. In the top 20 disciplines, there is not a single discipline from social sciences and humanities. In the RSCI, about a third, already social sciences and humanities. So we look at two very different research ecosystems. And the last slide, the last slide actually shows, okay, I will just omit a few slides which actually show the citation patterns, because if we analyze field by field, you will also see the different kinds of publications in the same field, and I have here example of physics and economics get cited. Say in physics, it's primarily the Russian publications coming from large international collaborations from fields like nuclear physics and physics of particles. And in the RSCI, it's actually the material sciences which get cited the most. And even more striking for me was analytics on business and economics. If we look at the economics publications in the core collection, it's mostly publications on economic theory. And if we look on econometrics, on financial modeling, if we look at RSCI, actually two of the most cited publications come from the field of agricultural economics. Came very much as a surprise to me. It's actually two top fields are agricultural economics and regional studies, regional economics. So, by creating the regional citation database and placing it on the Web of Science platform, we are able to create a flexible set of metrics. And as you can see on this slide, we now can look at the Web of Science platform and analyze the total number of citations across all databases, the number of citations in a core collection, which is the golden standard, and then the number of citations in each of the individual databases. So to sum it up, I'd like to say that by creating the regional citation databases, we can move from the binary juxtaposition of the core and periphery. As long as we had just one single global database, we had this clear boundary when the publications by the original authors could be either included in that global database or completely excluded from it and therefore invisible for the global research community. By creating the second layer of data sources, the regional citation databases, we can create a much more flexible system of research metrics and research evaluations. So I'd like to think about the system not about as a core and periphery, but rather as a coexisting research ecosystem on a single platform that would allow dialogue, cooperation, and mutual visibility.
Well, thanks. So far we've been talking about the databases that have existed in recent years and those which exist at the moment and the changes we are seeing. With Chris Keane, who's coming from JISC and is working on infrastructure, I'd like to talk about the future. So one thing is our focus in publications nowadays, but with the changes that are in the science communication, possibly it's going to be more important to start talking nowadays about how old metrics is going to be valued and who's going to hold the data, about how the blogs are going to be counted, etc. Cameron Neylon and Geoff Builder propose principles for open scholarly infrastructure. In a way that they were asking questions such as what type of governance should be established for scientific data to ensure public critical analysis so that we don't have the problems in the future that we're having nowadays with the fact that the way that things are classified happens in not so transparent ways. Which types of organizations should manage the data? Do we want this data in the future to be in the hands of private organizations, private-public partnerships, in the hands of the government, public agencies? Should these be distributed or centralized system? There have been many studies in STS emphasizing the importance of infrastructure in showing how we see the world. So the science of the future, how should it be, Chris?
Oh, big question. I'll perhaps just talk about a couple of the points what I pick out of the article you mentioned with Geoff Builder and Cameron Neylon. And like I said, we'll talk briefly about now and then the infrastructure we need in the future, and both the potential, well, what we need and the potential for what we could be doing. All the things we'd like to do but we can't do because there isn't stuff there to work on. The key point from that article is governance. The thing that they stress the most is that governance is the most important thing around sustainable infrastructure. Who owns, who runs the piece of, whether it's data or a database, some software, identifiers, a computer system. The long-term thing to get right, in their view, and I think I agree with this, is who has oversight of that. And when they were working on ORCID, I should say, when Geoff Builder and Crossref were working on ORCID, they said the most important aspect of ORCID was not the technical or getting buy-in, it was getting the principles for ORCID, which you can find on their website, and to get those right to start with about who can do what and how it will work, and the rest followed from there. And incidentally, they're currently working on